Hi, I'm Mal from the Money Study, bringing you another episode of our Take 10 Challenge, number 61, all about our help debt and other student debts as well. Okay, there's the disclaimer. It's all about facts, it's about figures, it's about information, it's got nothing to do with advice. Okay, help debt. So your higher education loan program. So you've gone off to uni, it cost you a fortune, and literally you borrowed some money from the government effectively to be able to effectively pay for our university. And now we've got our degree, but we've also got one hell of a debt to pay back. So the idea is that once you get above a certain level of earnings, then you have to pay it back at certain percentages. Now, if you don't earn enough money, you don't have to pay it back. And obviously there's consequences in all of this. The compulsory repayment threshold for the 23-24 income year is 51,550, meaning that if you earn less than 51,550, you don't have to make any repayments on your help debt. As soon as you do get above 51,550, then we start making some payments. So I've got a little chart coming up shortly just to show you the amounts and so forth that you would have to pay. Now, of course, you can make voluntary repayments, so it's not literally a case that you just have to do this percentage business. If you want to get rid of this debt earlier, if you've got the funds to do so, you can make voluntary repayment to the ATO at any time. It just means that when you do your tax return, the ATO, they'll calculate your income for the year, and they'll turn around and say, okay, this is your compulsory repayment. This is the amount of money that you've got to find this year to reduce this debt. Now, I suppose the best part about the help debt in some ways is the fact that it doesn't attract interest. It doesn't have an interest rate attached to it. But unfortunately, at the moment, it's adjusted or indexed to inflation. So basically what it boils down to is if inflation is very, very low, like it had been back in, before COVID and so forth, we had very low inflation rate. Therefore, the growth on our help debt was also very low. But since we've had the end of COVID and all the stimulus and so forth, all that really did was push up inflation, and with the supply chain problems and so forth causing us more dramas, then inflation has really started to run a bit very hot, really, in comparison to what's been going on of late. So even though we don't have an interest rate, our help debt is going up because the debt is actually adjusted with this inflation. So the bigger the inflation, the bigger the debt. So if we do have some savings, well, obviously one strategy is just to pay off some of the debt. And if we can do it before the indexation is applied on June 1, then that is going to save us some money. So, but as I say, it's always a case we've got to have this money to be able to do it. I'd say it was always suggested that if you had a help debt, don't worry about it. It was the best debt you could possibly have. The debt was obviously giving you a qualification that in theory meant you were going to be making more money. And because there was no interest rate and the inflation was low, it was one of those sort of things, just pay it off over time. When you start to earn some good dollars, it won't really feel like much of a pain or whatever. But of course, now that inflation's going up, this is certainly starting to cause us a problem. I'll say, because the indexation rate has recently been higher than the savings rate and mortgage rates. So your money, is not making as much money elsewhere. So in regard, it was always a case with money, where can I make the most amount of money? If you had a very low interest rate debt, then okay, could we put our money into an investment that's making us more than the debt level? Well, in the past, yes, we could. Now, not quite so easy. Now, of course, you can make early repayments using a BPay arrangement. And so once you set up that BPay, we can just make payments ad hoc anytime you like to reduce that debt with any spare money. And I love saying any spare money that you might have. The trouble is with help debt is that you can't reverse the decision. So it's unlike, you're putting money on your mortgage, or if you bought some shares or had some sort of savings capacity, then you could always withdraw the money from the savings account, or you could even redraw from your mortgage. That's not true with help, because if you pay the help debt down, you can't then just say, oh gosh, I need some money, pull some money back out of there, debt, and increase my debt again. No, you can't. No, you can't. Once you've paid it down to any degree, that's the level that your help debt is now sitting at. Now, hopefully this next one doesn't really affect you, but it basically boils down, if you die, then the debt doesn't carry forward. It doesn't eat into your estate. So the debt dies along with you. But I'm hoping that obviously the help debt, generally speaking, is applying to younger people, that this is not really going to be a problem. Now, of course, if you think, even though you've done this degree, that you could be on lower income for a long time, you basically did your degree or whatever, but you really realise that, really was a waste of time, because you never got intentions of working in the industry, or perhaps you can't get work in the industry, and you're basically working somewhere else, or you found something you like or whatever. But if you expect to remain on a low income forever, well, then obviously you may never have to pay the debt, which would mean if you made prepayments, then you've got to sort of ask the question, well, that was a bit of a waste of money. If I never had to pay it back, then why have I bothered to? And so it goes on. Of course, the risk there, of course, is that, we just don't know what you're going to do with your income. It's easier to say, look, I'm going to be a low income forever. That's probably a very, unlikely thing to happen. And of course, governments can change the rules. How many times have they changed the way funding to universities gone on over the last 15 decades and so forth? So, yep, they could change the rules around help debt, meaning that it's not tied to inflation, that perhaps it is got an interest rate, that perhaps you have to pay it back irrespective of your income. Could be all sorts of changes that they can do, because the government's struggling for money. They need this money to get it back. I suppose the worst scenario would be if you'd paid it back and then the government changed it so that people didn't have to pay for university. That'd be a bit of an awful one. You've just finished paying your help debt out, and they say, look, nah, we're going to abolish all university debt. Who knows? And this is the problem with anything to do with the government. You just never know what's going to happen in the future, and we really can't bank on either direction. I think it's always just a case with these sort of things to do what you think's most likely. And in theory, the most likely thing to happen is just continuation of what we've already got. But changes certainly do happen. Now, if you're trying to save for a house, and you've got a help debt, what should you be doing? Should you be paying down the debt, get that out of the way, or should you be throwing the extra money towards the deposit on your house? And this can be sort of, quite a common scenario. Now, of course, one of the issues, however, is that if you've got a debt, then that reduces your income, obviously, and it also means that when the bank is looking at your ability to borrow money, they'll look at that loan as saying, okay, you need to pay that back over time, and therefore they will not lend you as much money. But of course, on the flip side, if you do pay the loan out, well, now we don't have as much money for our deposit. So it's a bit of a tough one to know which way to go. In my case, it'd be a case of case by case situation. We'd look at your overall scenario, how much you've got, what you're trying to borrow, your income, all those sort of things, to try and work out what really should you be doing. Should you be paying the debt down, or should you be paying more money into your deposit? But as an example, if someone's got 70,000, got a help debt of 30,000, pretty typical. Well, each year they need to pay off on that income about 3.5% of their income, or nearly $2,500. But if indexation was 7%, that would add another 2,100. So by paying down the money that they were paying, they really only reduced the debt by $350 a year, which is pretty much next to nothing in comparison to the size of the debt. So you can see this impact of the inflation compared to the compulsory rate, that we really could be in a situation where we're just treading water. We're not really doing much. So quite problematic. So the real risk, you could be working for several years and really get absolutely nowhere. You're back to where you started with this inflation. Now, of course, they're talking about things slowing down, or they're talking about cutting interest rates and so forth. This could change our thought pattern, and Again, we'll only know in the future as to what really does go on. But it's always just a case of comparing, what could you do with the money? Where could you earn more money? What's the likelihood of our inflation continuing and so forth. Here's the chart of the different rates. So you can see there at the bottom, by the time someone's up to around about 100,000, they're paying 5%, so they're paying over $5,000 there by the time they're earning around about 100, and so it goes on. So yeah, not a small amount of money really when you consider it as part of your income. And of course, by the time you get up to 150, now we're up to 10%. So it's sort of not a linear scale. The more you're earning, the faster this thing does indeed go up. So I say, by the time you're over 150, you're doing 10% of your salary. 10% of 150 is 15,000. Yeah, that's a reasonable chunk of your take-home pay, effectively, to go towards paying down this debt. Because it's not just help debt, we've got all these other loans and things that work pretty similar. And I suppose as a younger person, just make sure you know what you can get, what you're entitled to, what sort of supplements and other things that are available to you. Always suggest it's worthwhile trotting along to Centrelink at some point, having a talk to one of their financial information officers or something like that, really to understand what you can do. Some people believe that they can't get some of these student loans because they're still living at home. There's all sorts of different rules and regulations around that. So yeah, go along to Centrelink, or just jump on the Services Australia website into Centrelink under students and have a look at and have a read about what you could indeed be entitled to. They used to have calculators there. I'm not too sure if they're still there or not, but you used to have a calculator. You could sort of punch in your details to find out what you would actually be eligible for. So yeah, quite a tricky one, help debt. It's one of those things that in hindsight we would have known exactly what to do. Going forward, yeah, not quite as easy. And probably that's the case with a lot of things we do with money. We just never know 100% the best thing. All we can really do, base it on what we believe is the most likely. Look forward to you joining us on another session.